Welcome to What If, So What, the podcast where we ask what's possible with digital and figure out how to make it real in your business. I'm Jim Hertzfeld.
And I'm Kim Chopek.
We're part of Perficient's digital strategy team, and today we'll ask what if, so what, and most importantly, now what?
In 2022, professional sports in North America are projected to generate over $80 billion in revenue. The NFL contributes the lion's share of that number, but since its founding here in the U.S. in 1993, Major League Soccer has experienced fast growth, with much of that growth stemming from innovating the fan experience through digital. Today, we talk with Diego Pinzon, Director of Digital Media and Content at MLS's Atlanta United, about what it takes to double down on engaging an already engaged fan base and what the future of digital looks like in professional sports. Diego, welcome to the podcast. We are so glad to speak with you today and hear a little bit more about digital customer, or in your case, fan experience at Atlanta United.
Kim, I'm very happy to be talking to you guys. It's very exciting to be here, and of course, talk a little bit about what I do and what we do at the club to make sure that we enhance the fan experience for our supporters.
Right. Well, actually, for our listeners, I don't want to make the assumption in the U.S. soccer's not the most popular sport. Unfortunately, it's making its way into the mainstream. But I'd love if you could start with a little bit of overview on just the business model. Let's start with the MLS in general. Can you give us a little bit of an overview of how the MLS works and how Atlanta United fits into that umbrella?
For sure. So MLS is obviously the top tier league in the United States in soccer. Different to general American sports, soccer around the world is usually divided into different divisions. And the top tier is usually the one that gets the more recognition or more awareness. So, for example, the Premier League in England, La Liga in Spain, the Bundesliga in Germany. And in the case of the US, MLS or Major League Soccer is the top tier league in the country. There are other divisions, but different to European or Latin American soccer organizations. We don't have promotion or relegation. So when a team performs very poorly at the end of the season, it usually gets relegated to the second division. In the case of the US, obviously because we are also an American league, that's not the case. And the teams are generally the same every season, just like any other American sports, unless obviously a franchise relocates or something like that happens or folds, which has happened in the past. But generally, just to give a more context on MLS, the league started following the 1994 World Cup, which was played here in the US.
Yeah.
And in 1996, the first season was played. So it's generally a very new league. And like you said, Kim, it's making its way to the mainstream. We are very fortunate, for example, here in Atlanta United to be one of the top clubs in the league. I think we are together with, for example, with Seattle Sounders up in Seattle, obviously, the Portland Timbers, and a few others teams that have a lot of recognition in their own markets, sometimes even more so than the football team, for example.
Right.
We are very fortunate to have that presence because not only we've won titles, but also we have a fan base that is extremely engaged and very supportive. Just to give you an example, really quick, Atlanta United, we are among the top 10 teams or clubs in the world in attendance to our stadium.
Oh, wow.
So we're way above some Premier League teams in England in terms of average attendance. We are averaging about 42,000 people into Mercedes-Benz Stadium every season or every match. It gives you an overview, very brief overview of where we stand at the moment. Because this is an international sport, obviously we have a lot of international players coming here. I think we are the league with the most players outside of the US and Canada. We have, in the case of Atlanta United, we have a lot of players from Mexico, from Argentina, from Brazil. Our coaching staff is made up entirely of Mexicans at the moment. And it's a very international sport. And at the same time, we are competing not only for the MLS Cup, which happens at the end of the season, but we're also, because of the nature of the sport, we're also competing in the region in North America. There's a confederation called CONCACAF, which oversees and regulates the sport in North and Central America and the Caribbean. And the same thing, each region has different confederations like UEFA in Europe, CONMEBOL in South America, and all of them make up what's known as World Football, or which is governed by FIFA, which is obviously perhaps the organization that's best known for
Right.
on the sport.
I mean, that's a great overview. And I think how it's organized, the governing bodies and all the different kind of groups that you talked about, maybe that's a little complex. It makes the sport, though, global, to your point, but the sport itself is so accessible. I'll speak for myself. Like sometimes I can't really watch a American football game. I don't understand the rules. Soccer to me is very accessible. I grew up with it. I get it. It's fun to watch. It's fast moving. And the fans, the supporters are so passionate. And I think when we're starting to talk about how digital informs the fan experience for Atlanta United, I think I feel like soccer is really leading the way and those kinds of experiences. And I understand the MLS has some core digital innovation pillars like fan connection, on-field talent, stadium experience, media quality, which I know is your ball game. How does Atlanta United activate digital programs within these pillars?
Yeah, so we are within MLS guidelines, and we make sure that we are striving to have the highest quality in terms of content, not only broadcast, but also the content that we put out on our digital platforms. And the reason for that, obviously, it's because not being the most popular league in the country, we are obviously fighting for a lot of awareness and interest that generally there isn't. So we are trying to attract not only new fans, but fans that are also understand the sport. Like we just said, it's being a global sport. A lot of people actually understand the sport very well
Right.
and know what it's a quality player and what isn't.
Right.
So we try to also do the same thing on the content that we're producing, and making sure that we are creating things that are different, that are sometimes outside of the box, and attracting that fan base, that showcasing a lot of behind the scenes, which is usually in soccer. Coaching staff sometimes are very reserved in what they want to share and what not.
Mm-hmm.
But being in MLS, it helps us because we need to get that awareness. We need to make sure that we are putting our players front and center where our supporters want to see them. So we are always trying to enhance that experience with creating content with the players, showcasing a lot of behind the scenes action that normally you wouldn't get from any other soccer organization outside of the US. So I think that's a big pillar for us. And obviously, how do we complement the stadium experience? So in the case of Atlanta United being one of the top teams in the world in attendance, we also want to make sure that we are not only showcasing that to everyone around the world, but we also want to make sure that we are enhancing that experience with the content that we're putting out on our platform. So showcasing the match day experience, all that, like us millennials and centennials sometimes say that FOMO, or fear of missing out, trying to put that out in the world and making sure that whenever all those sports fans that are here in Atlanta or in the South, whenever they're here in town, we always want to make sure that we are enticing them to come to Mercedes-Benz and experience something that's completely different and that might be foreign to some people in the region as well. But always trying to put that out there and making sure that we are portrayed not only as a very local club that's very tied to the community, but also a global brand at the same time.
I love that idea about you showcasing the stadium experience. And I wonder, have those MLS pillars evolved, or have you had to evolve them now that fans are coming back into the stadiums? I'm thinking about the effects of the pandemic, previous and ongoing. How do you stay connected to your supporters who might not be ready to venture back into the physical stadiums beyond, showcasing some of that content online?
Yeah, it's been obviously, I think, tough for everyone. We are thankful that we not only, because we have the record in attendance in MLS in average per season, we still have a lot of supporters that really wanted to come back to the stadium and wanted to be part of it. But obviously, there are some people that have had some needs and things have changed. Priorities have shifted for a lot of people.
Sure.
And for us, it was very important to understand that last year when we came back to play in our stadium, and understanding that not everyone was going to be comfortable, and understanding that our fans needed to feel that connection to the club. So we were always thinking about not only on the digital spectrum, but how do we make sure that we are bringing our fans closer to us, and how we're connecting them with physical activations closer to the stadium or in stadium that make them feel comfortable with coming back. And we are I think we were the first stadium in the world to be completely cashless. So that was part also of the experience of providing that digital monetization for fans to utilize our app and make sure that they can not only get their tickets for every single match via their app, via the United app, but also they can purchase food through there. They can purchase beverages. They can pay directly with their phones, everyone in the stadium. So, and we also have implemented some kiosks where even though the stadium is cashless, you can bring your own money, and it's like an ATM. Basically, you put in money, and then it gives you like a debit card sort of thing that allows you to purchase not only retail food and so on inside the stadium. But also, to your point, it was very important to educate our fans because obviously we needed to make sure that they knew how to access their ticket on their app. So that was a big part as well of what the club tried to do more often, and making sure that we were educating fans, understanding that you needed our app to make sure that you were inside the stadium, that you were having your seats, your tickets, and having that access was extremely important. And that is something that at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, they've also evolved, obviously, with the Falcons as well in NFL, and also all the other events like concerts and so on that have happened in the stadium as well.
Wow, that's fascinating. And as you were talking, it made me think we often talk about in our traditional business conversations, change management. And it's always, internal change management and making sure people are on board and educated. We have not yet talked about, well, what does that mean yet to the customer? What does it mean to educate the customer? Extend that change management philosophy to making sure the customers, or in your case, the fans, understand what's going on and can kind of get back into the experience without a lot of frictions. That's actually pretty fantastic thing to think about. And when you're thinking about those kinds of engagement strategies, I'm curious, because we talk a lot about data. How are you using data to drive that fan connection and deliver the quality content you're talking about, or even leverage your existing content or communications more effectively?
We use data on a day-to-day basis and making sure that we are understanding not only from what type of content is providing more engagement or more conversions, but also how our fans are also interacting with that content. And also the mere fact that we are replying to every single direct message that we receive on every platform. Wow. We have people in our team that obviously, we being a sports organization, we get a lot of messages.
Sure.
But we always try to reply to every single one, and making sure, like, for example, we've had some moments in match when, the match is going on and everything, we're constantly focused on covering the match as it's happening. But we might receive some messages on Twitter, for example, of a fan just complaining or expecting something different from a specific section that they're in. A spill happened, for example, on the floor, and it's not being cleaned, and they DM us on Twitter. So we make sure that we immediately communicate that with the stadium operations team so that they can go in and quickly resolve the issue. Also, we receive messages every now and then about different sections in the stadium where perhaps we had a retail drop a few months ago, and the fans were expecting to go into the team store to buy that specific polo that we had released, but had been sold out. So we were trying to figure out a way that we can help that supporter as well to be able to buy that online, and making sure that they got it on time. So we're always trying to resolve those issues and making sure that we are not only there to push out the content of the match, but we're also there to be a service to our fans, even when we are running around and being constantly activating around the match. Right. But trying to reply as much as possible and as fast as possible to every single message that we receive.
That's a pretty incredible level of service. I'd like to come down and see that in person, because you really have to be agile. I mean, that's the true meaning of agile in that case. So I know we've been talking a lot about kind of the physical sport and the physical fan engagement and how you're extending digital. But I'm curious, because I know part of our partnership, Atlanta United with Perficient, is the esports part of Atlanta United. There's so many topics around the metaverse, and it's an area that we think is really concretely leading the way in innovative digital experience concepts. But it's something I know very little about as far as what Atlanta United's role is. So can you give us a little bit of an overview? What's the club doing on that front, and how do you feel it's expanding your digital business vision?
Of course, Kim. So our esports team, we're very fortunate that we have two Brazilian gamers at the moment. that are within the top 10 of gamers in South America playing the video game FIFA, which is the main video game in the sport of soccer. And we've partnered with them. We hire them. They are basically just like we hire players, or we bring players to play the sport. They're also our gamers, so they play with official Atlanta United gear, digital assets as well, and they are part of our esports team. So we have two guys, one Paulo Neto and another one called Vini Leiva. They're very young. Paulo is, I believe, 20 years old, and Vini's 18.
Oh, wow.
But they're extremely good at what they do, and they are always fighting for championships in every single tournament they play in. Paulo, for example, who has been with us for the last 3 years, he in March just won the EMLS Cup, which is the main tournament
of
esports in the US. So we are the current EMLS Cup champions, which is very fortunate to the work that they do. We have invested very heavily in the scene since the beginning. We were a few of the first few clubs in MLS that actually hired full-time gamers to play with our club logo, with our club branding. And now we've partnered with Proficient as the official sponsor of that esports team. And we are taking the Proficient brand as well with our gamers everywhere we go. We just came back in the month of May from a tournament in London, in England, where the guys ended up in 4th place out of probably 200 gamers. And, we were there in the top 4 of the world playing this tournament called the Team of the Season Cup from EA Sports, from FIFA. And now we are also going to London at the beginning of July. And then the middle of July as well, we will be playing, hopefully, if they qualify, the official FIFA Esports World Cup, where they will compete against, obviously, the best there is in the entire planet. So I think it's similar to the World Cup. That's the physical World Cup that happens every 4 years.
Right.
And they are going to compete in the FIFA Esports World Cup that's coming up in the month of July. So I think that for us is going to be a huge driver. We're always hoping to make sure that we are not only delivering the best for them as our gamers, but also for Proficient as our partner. And we're always trying to not only hopefully win everything, but also provide content that takes both of our brands forward via our two gamers.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible, the growth of esports in general. I know I'm based here in Chicago, and they're currently planning on building a multi-million-dollar esports facility in proximity to some of the other stadiums here. And the support around that kind of facility relative to the non-support from other facilities it's just been incredible. And it really demonstrates the growth of that movement. And to your point, just the opportunity for bolstering the club awareness in a completely new and different channel. That's fantastic. And is that FIFA World Cup Esports, is that annually?
That's an annual event, and this is the first time, because of COVID, it was canceled the last 2 years. So this is the first time that they're coming back on a one-on-one. That's going to be happening in Denmark, in Copenhagen. So we're going to be there with them, hopefully, if they qualify. They still have to go through a normal qualification process, but we're very positive that they're going to be there. And that's going to obviously put the brand in a whole new level, because I think the biggest driver for us in terms of esports is obviously awareness, but a global awareness.
Right.
We are very recognized in Atlanta already as a club. We are very recognized within MLS because we have won championships, because we are one of the top teams in the country. And we are sort of recognized in the world of soccer, but in the esports arena, there's a whole new different audience that hasn't been explored. And we're hoping to tap into that audience to make them fans of our esports team, but also fans of the club in general, right? And trying to understand that even though most of the kids that are watching our esports team play FIFA, they might never really tune in to watch an Atlanta United match on TV or come to the stadium, but they will support our two gamers on our esports team on a constant basis. So I think it's another way to expand our brand and reach fan bases that perhaps will never hear of Atlanta United before.
That's just so fantastic. I mean, in addition to that effort, what else can club supporters look forward to this season?
So we are currently in the middle of the season, the MLS season, I should say, because there's different verticals within the club, but we're always obviously basing it off from what happens in MLS. But in general, I think
Sure.
we're hoping to obviously always win titles in every single aspect and every single vertical of the club. And we, at least on my side, from what I can do, is try to support as much as possible that area. And the content that we're creating is basically just making sure that we are providing fans with the opportunity to be closer to our players, to our gamers as well, with the esports team, and making sure that they feel connected to the club, making sure that we are not seeing them necessarily as customers, but we are seeing them as what they are: fans, supporters, people that really invest in the club, people that obviously are paying a ticket to go to a match, or paying something for a jersey, or they are investing or are spending their money just because they like to support the team. So we need to make sure that we're always providing them with enough quality content that will entice them to continue to support the team, whether we win, whether we lose, and obviously connecting them. We are very good at connecting with the grassroots as well, programs that we have in the club, and trying to amplify that as much as possible so that the community revolves around the club. And when you come to Atlanta, you see it with fans having bumper stickers on their cars, little kids wearing jerseys, murals around the city, people that are really into it. And that's what we want to continue to have every single season, year after year. And this season, hopefully, with at least our esports team at the moment, which is coming up pretty soon, hopefully, qualify for the World Cup, and not only try to make a run for it, but hopefully win it. And that will perhaps entice other fans to also follow through and come together for the club. And then in terms of content, we are planning a lot of different activations within our app that are going to be very beneficial for them when they're in stadium, creating a lot of engagement opportunities for them that are connecting the physical with the digital arenas and making sure that they are more connected to the club than any other time.
That's fantastic. And I know Atlanta was just selected as one of the host cities for the next physical FIFA World Cup in 2026. Have you started planning for that effort yet? I know that's so exciting.
Yes, we were part of the announcement. And when that happened in mid-June, it was incredible to see the effort of so many years. I personally have been with the club for 1 year now, since 2021, but a lot of people have already worked for this for at least 3 to 4 years, trying to plan when the US, Canada, and Mexico bid it for the World Cup, and they were selected. A lot of people started to plan for this. And since all the way from the top, from the owner of the club and the Falcons and Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Arthur Blank, he had that vision, and he built Mercedes-Benz Stadium with the purpose of not only hosting Super Bowls, which already did, of not only hosting MLS Cups, which already did as well in 2018, but also with the purpose and the desire to be part of a global event like the World Cup. So thanks to that vision, we now have that opportunity to be part of the 2026 World Cup. And we're already starting to have those conversations about how we're going to not only support the event, but at the same time, how we're going to tap into that audience and all those eyes that are going to be in our stadium, and us being the soccer club or the soccer team that plays there. How can we also bring in new followers and new audiences that are coming only for the World Cup, but are going to be interested in seeing everything that we have to offer? So those conversations are going to be ongoing. I think for the next 4 years, we're going to have a lot of talks around how to engage fans from all over the world, and connecting them to Atlanta United and being the host city for the World Cup.
That's so exciting. Again, thanks so much for talking to us today, Diego. Thank you for your partnership with Perficient. And we look forward to the rest of the Atlanta United season in its entirety, and certainly look forward to World Cup 2026.
100%, Kim. Thank you very much. And looking forward to continue to working with Perficient as well, with our esports team and beyond. And hopefully we can bring you guys as well that FIFA Esports World Cup title as well this year.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Diego.
Thank you.
Now it's time for our namesake segment, What If, So What, and most importantly, Now What? Jim, it was so interesting talking to Diego and hearing about how they serve fans through digital experiences, and how they are using esports in particular to get that next generation excited about soccer. We don't talk to many professional sports teams here. What were your big takeaways? And I like, what can more traditional businesses learn from Major League Soccer and Diego, you think?
Yeah, I learned a lot on this interview. Thanks for being the resident true football fan.
Thanks. You're
Kim.
welcome.
So appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate the sport. It was great to hear this perspective, and I appreciate everything that's done globally and just the creativity that organization is putting into it, which was great.
Yeah.
You know, we have clients that are in the, I will call, licensed sportswear business from a brand and retail perspective. And I think sports in general is a unique brand experience overall. I mean, it's a powerful brand experience because it's inherently emotional.
Yes.
I'll date myself, but someone will catch this: the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. That goes back to Wild World of Sports in the 70s. And there's just, there's emotion, wins and losses, and, you know, the ups and downs and the excitement of the game. And there's just so much around it. And then you add on to that this shared identity, right? So you could be a fan. I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, sadly, unfortunately. It's a tough row, but you know what? You can run across town, or across the country, and you have that shared identity. Even if you're not from the place, even not from the location, you have that shared, experience. So again, hometown, school. I just think there's so much around sports. And then you take that to the next step and you think about what constitutes a fan experience. And we heard a lot about the stadium, and those are great innovations, the cashless transactions. That's just so, the convenience that comes with that. Obviously, it's just easing the transaction. It makes it convenient for everybody, the vendor, the fan, of course, the data and the tracking that we get out of that. I was also thinking about things like these stadium districts like Wrigleyville. We work with the Wrigleyville and the Cubs, and the St. Louis Ballpark Village, which is, these physical venues that sprout up. And then there's all the other things we know about TV and, like I said, licensed merchandising and ticketing and mobile, and then go on to fantasy sports, which we didn't even get into, or sports betting, which we didn't touch at all.
Right.
I think about influencers and brand builders like Abe Answer, former guest golfer. And then what we learned today is just, it really is kind of a new frontier, and it's inevitable that esports would be part of that. And so I was excited, and I learned a lot about FIFA. I've played FIFA a couple times on the Xbox or PlayStation, but had no idea that it is growing at the pace that it is. I looked up some stats. And by the way, Paulo Neto finished in the top 8 in the FIFA World Cup, which happened in between these recordings.
Excellent.
I found out that there were, in the World Cup 2022, there were 864,183 streaming hours, which is crazy. And then esports in general, there's like 35 billion hours of streaming per year. So it's absolutely a huge destination and a huge place to grow. And I found out that, and we'll come into some more of this later, that there are a lot of new entries out there. There's a brand called Fitchin. There's something called Simwin. And they're creating this whole combo of Web3 and metaverse and blockchain and, of course, NFTs to sort of watch, play, bet. There's such a frontier that we just scratched the surface on. So I was just excited to learn that it's more than just a fan experience or a stadium experience, which is cool. It's a cool phygital type of thing, but there's much more out there. And I'm just excited to learn about what else is out there for fans.
Yeah, so much in terms of that fan experience, like you said, taking it from phygital to completely other channels and really getting new fans through physical experience like gaming. I mean, it's a physical experience. You're sitting there playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
That fan connection is pretty intrinsic when you get it to that level. I thought talking with Diego was fascinating. First of all, I think FIFA and MLS have such a complicated business model with very real consequences for underperformance, which I thought, any business could take a cue from. You get not performing, you get relegated. That's just the way it is.
Right.
But talk about challenges to a unified experience. If your team isn't performing, what do you do with your fan base then? I think we probably have a lot of Ted Lasso fans out there. So
I was just
really
thinking about Ted
understand
Lasso.
what that relegated experience looks like for a losing team.
Well, that's a shared experience.
It is a
sure.
Yes. So emotional, like you're saying. But I think that MLS really seems to be an early adopter of that true digital first mindset and how they think about the fan experience. It's something else that I think other businesses can learn from. When Diego was talking about the fan experience in the stadium, how to extend that experience for people who aren't quite ready yet to come back to the stadium, and really shifting to be that digital first mindset. I thought his examples of how they're using real-time data to interact with fans in real time, to me, that's just about as high touch as you can get. And how do you start scaling that while you maintain authenticity and that interaction? It occurred to me as Diego was talking, we were just all getting excited, but his team are fans. So employees, we talk a lot about employee experience here, but in this environment, employees are both part of the team as well as fans. That's such an aspirational objective and key result in my mind as a business leader. What if not only your customers were fans, what if you could get your employees to be fans? So right. I just love to start thinking about what that means in terms of driving loyalty and shifting that notion of customer loyalty to advocacy to now, in my spectrum, I'm thinking fandom. But what if you could do that? What's your what if here, Jim?
Is there fan fiction in that too? Is there like an extreme crossover?
Sure there is. I haven't looked it up, but I'm sure. Yeah.
A lot of Star Wars fan fiction, but maybe that's another topic. I think that there's what you said about real-time data, and again, that venue experience and the idea of real-time. There's a spill, somebody fell, something's not right.
Yes.
I know that's something, again, when we were working with some licensed sportswear companies, another exciting thing about sports, it's real time. Somebody can also hit a home run.
Right.
Or make a play, right? And then next thing you know, we're triggering a whole merchandising engine around that player, around that play, that highlight that showed up on SportsCenter. So yeah, the real time aspect of it is pretty unique. I think the what if here, Kim, is pretty self-evident. What if you could turn customers into fans? And this is not a new question. This is maybe the oldest question in sales and marketing, which is you want raving fans. You want people who sing your praises. They're advocates. They never leave. They're loyal. They spend more. They love the products. But I think what I'm hearing, and what I think is a nice lesson for many types of brands, is how do you sort of deconstruct what it means to be a fan? How do you weave that shared experience and identity into a fan life cycle? So if that exists, if not, we'll create one. But, you have the build up and the anticipation of the season. So this is midsummer. People are getting ready for football. Everybody around me seems to be talking about it. The trades are being made. How's the team going to do? The forecasts are coming out. The picks are in. People are getting excited of what is possible for the season. And that translates to the game or the match or even the draft. I mean, the way that some leagues have monetized the draft, turned the draft, which I always thought was one of the most boring things in the world, into this like multiple day event. And it's a destination, and they've really done some amazing things. So then, of course, you have the game. Oh, yeah, that's right. There's a game. There's a match, right? So, but then there's after the game, the analysis, the highlights, what went wrong, the sports writers, what did this writer have to say? What did that writer have to say? The ongoing rivalries. And then it just keeps going, right? We just go from game to game, season to season. So I'm wondering if that, fan experience is a lesson for other brands to turn customers into fans. If we can deconstruct that fan experience, translate it into a shopper's typical journey, is a good alternative to it. Then let the imagination go. So if that's possible, Kim, so what? What do you think?
Well, it's interesting as you're talking about, you're right, the anticipation around professional sports. And I was kind of thinking, I don't anticipate and get excited about ordering my next round of laundry detergent, so what is that connective tissue to get me excited about making that purchase? And maybe it's analogous to, if you're not a sports fan, maybe you're a fan of a particular television series, or streaming series. Yes, there, like you said, there is the series itself, but there are all these discussions, what's going to happen, who's going to do what. There are like podcasts dedicated to dissecting every episode, thinking about some opportunities to do that. Trader Joe's, for example, has a podcast that's just about products at Trader Joe's, how they're sourced and how people use them. Then that's fans. Yes. People have a connection to Trader Joe's. And why is that? I think you keyed in on the most important part of that customer journey where you can go from repeat buyer to however you define a loyal customer to advocate to fandom. And it's emotion. How do you drive that emotion at every level? So yeah, maybe I'm not excited about going to my weekly grocery shopping, but I'm excited to go to Trader Joe's because I have some kind of emotional connection. I think a lot of brands think they have fans because they have a high net promoter score and they tout that, but I think that's a mistake. You're not getting fans through MPS. Maybe you're getting feedback on one or two touch points. So I think for me, the so what is really thinking about how to really start thinking about that post-purchase part of the journey. So many brands focus on top of the funnel acquisition and engagement to get to that first purchase. But are you really creating a fan? Are you really creating an emotional connection there? When it comes to post-purchase care and nurturing, there is a lot of opportunity for improvement. I don't care what brand you are. And to leverage everything you know about that customer to keep them coming back, including that motivation and emotion that brought them to you in the first place. So that's my so what is you want to create loyal fans. Are you taking care of them and nurturing that post-purchase journey in whatever way is going to drive that emotional connection? If that's the so what, that's a big so what. Now what? How can you start dissecting that fan experience?
I'm going to go back to your laundry detergent comment. And
Yeah.
And I think every weekly load of laundry is like a weekly match or game. So I'm just going to I'm going to try that out. So there's got to be something. There's got to be something exciting about the next load of clean clothes. I don't know. So
yes.
Yeah, the outcome. So we'll keep stretching that one a little bit. But yeah, I do think there's some lessons there. I think you're right. And I'll go back to the touch points. You mentioned NPS, maybe one or two touch points. So the now what for me, it is going to be analogous to a lot of things that we've talked about, Kim. Like how do we narrow down the ideas and start small where there's a valuable opportunity? And I think when you look at fandom, again, if we sort of deconstruct fandom, you have things you can control, things that you can influence. You look at the usual suspects, the store, the showroom, the stadium, the website, the mobile app, the messaging, right? They've been digitized. So that's pretty basic. Maybe a field sales rep or a call center. Now we have a virtual agent. Again, there's sort of a digital twin or digital translation. You have your product itself. Now you've got sort of connected products, fine. But there's a lot that you can influence. You've got the events and you have these virtual events. To me, it's just boom, right away. We have an unlimited number of virtual events that we can extend. The sponsorships of digital assets and players. You can't talk about this without talking about NFTs. We talked about that a lot with Mark Cuban earlier in the year. But I think there's some interesting innovation on NFTs, by the way, about smart contracts and some research I did around players who are in alternative decentralized leagues using smart contracts and blockchain to get paid. That means anybody can play and win. So there's some really cool stuff happening that's even more meta than what we've seen so far. Streaming, we didn't talk about Twitch, but if you get out of esports and you look at some of these other gaming leagues, again, we just have an unlimited opportunity. And then, Kim, I learned about something that I'm still going to wrap my head around called meta mobility. And so this is a research project by Hyundai, and Hyundai is looking at virtually controlled everything. Think robots, think in the plant, think about repairs, think about test drives. We're going to hear something in another episode that General Motors is doing that's pretty awesome, that is kind of meta and virtual all at the same time. I was thinking about Paulo Neto, number 8, FIFA esports guy, player, and he's controlling these players in a video game. But what if he was controlling robots on the field instead of on a PlayStation? So that's meta mobility. Again, trying to get my head wrapped around it. But
that's wild.
Yeah, it's. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened. And to me, this is really thinking way beyond where you can influence and then map that back to this sort of fan life cycle. I think there's something there, Kim. How do you think like a fan? How do we reach fans? And is that something we can get creative about for the most traditional brands?
I mean, it would be very cool to have my personal robot go up against Paulo on the field, his personal robot. That would be amazing. Talk about a fan experience. I definitely would lose.
But you don't even have to break a sweat.
That's
So,
which I said maybe goes against the general spirit of sports, in particular soccer specifically.
Right.
But it's an innovation.
I would root for you, Kim.
Thanks.
I'd be your number one fan.
My number one and only fan. Thanks again to Diego for sharing his vision for the future of digital at Atlanta United. Here at Perficient, we are very excited about our partnership with the team and look forward to more opportunities to talk digital across every aspect of the game. Please rate What If So What and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And until next time, keep asking what if, so what, and most importantly, now what?
You've been listening to What If, So What, the digital strategy podcast from Perficient with Jim Hertzfeld and Kim Chopek. We want to thank our Perficient colleague, JD Norman, for our music today. Subscribe to the podcast and don't miss a single episode. You can find this season along with show notes at perficient.com. Thanks for listening.